Folks, thank you very much. Gives me great pleasure. First, I'll introduce our moderator, Liron Shoham from the Interagency Task Force. And please welcome the director, Dana Goldberg.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
I think we need a minute.
Okay, feel free to have one.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming and watching the film and for staying here for the Q&A. I want to thank the Other Israel Film Festival for inviting me over, inviting the film. Thank you, JCC, and thank you, the festival team, Carol Zabar, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dana, for making a beautiful and intimate and very heavy film that, through this intimate lens, looks at so many hard and big issues. And this being the Other Israel Film Festival, and me coming from the task force, we educate about Arab citizens of Israel. I want to start from that angle. I asked an Arab Israeli, a postdoc here in political science, what she thought of the film. Somebody who speaks about these issues a lot and her identity and what it is to be an Arab citizen of Israel. And she said, I found the film fascinating and deeply humane, and that it powerfully depicts the two structures that non-normative Arab citizens have to negotiate: the state, where they are always seen as a potential threat, and their own conservative and patriarchal society, which limits their self-expression. They are always out of place in these structures, and in trying to find their place, they become exhausted and vulnerable to manipulation by both. I think this is a very thick and rich summation of some of the issues that you raise in this film, and I'm wondering if this is something you set out to depict.
Yes, there are many subjects to this film, many themes, and one of them is, of course, being a part of a minority. I think this film, it's a very Israeli film, but it's also it's also universal. And I think that everywhere, around the world, minorities always suffer from these things you just mentioned, and it's always easiest to blame who is the one who has the least power, and here in this film, Yasmin is definitely the immediate suspect, and like she says in some part of the film, there were other people there who in the scene, in the bar, in the lagoon, and they were all asked questions at the lagoon, but she's the only one there. She's the only one at the police station, and yes, unfortunately, it happens everywhere. And there are several cases in Israel right now. And yeah, I don't know if you know. There's a Dov trial about. He's a Russian guy who was accused in murdering a girl, a little girl, and he's already, I think, about a decade in prison, maybe a bit less, I'm not sure. And now there are new evidence, and there were all the time voices saying that he's not guilty, and he's already in jail for almost a decade. And there were other stories as well, and I'm sure they're everywhere, such stories.
The interrogation itself is so intimate, and it feels like you get a window into it feels very realistic. Mm-hmm. What has been the reaction? I want to know how did you achieve this realism, and what's been the reaction from people who've seen it, people who are professionals in the field?
Okay, this is a great question, and actually I would like to say a few things about this film. First of all, the film was shot in 3.5 days. And my partner, that's something I had to say before. This film was made by me and by Efrat Mishori, who is a poet and was my partner here in this project. And we made 2 short films together, and then we made this feature film. And actually, we had this idea, this concept of these two axes, and we had no money. We had no money. Actually, the screenplay, I mean, the entire project was built for no budget, for no money. So Efrat came to me and had this idea. She had this idea. She had half of the screenplay. She said, "Okay, Dana, I have an idea about a woman who is going through the last day of her life." And she described what she felt had to be there in the axis of Leni Sadeh. And I told her that it sounds great and it sounds like a feature film, but it's only a half a feature. And then I told her, okay, I'm going to think about the other half. And I knew we had no money, and in Israel now the condition is really, really difficult, as you know, and it's almost impossible to get money for films. So I thought, okay, we have half a film which is taking place in many locations, and I thought what would be interesting for the second axis. And I thought of all the characters that Leni Sadeh meets on the way, and I said, okay, one of the characters she meets along the way should be the center of the second axis. And immediately I thought about Yasmin, who meets her at the very last moment of her life, at the very, on the beach. And I thought, okay, so we are going to take Yasmin and have her investigated for a crime she never committed. And that way the story will be told in two ways. First of all, Leni Sadeh's axis, which is mostly visual. It has almost no words in it, no replicas, almost. Very visual and very like doing things. And Yasmin's axis is very verbal. It's very dramatic, but it's very verbal. And they're taking place in 2 different days, but they meet in the middle, in the end. And so I thought about this concept, and we had the outline, a very detailed outline, and the whole screenplay was the whole movie was actually improvised. There was no written screenplay. I mean, there was a treatment, there was an outline, a very detailed one, as I said, but there was not one written line. And actually, the whole cast, beside Evgenia Dodina and Samira Seraya, they were all non-actors. And they were all playing themselves. The taxi driver is a real taxi driver, the pedicurist is a real pedicurist, the shopkeeper is a real shopkeeper, and the same goes for the investigator.
Did he really translate Bialik to Arabic?
Yes, I'll tell you that in a minute. That's a nice story. But the investigator, he's a real investigator. He's a real policeman, and we invited him to do his job. I mean, he didn't know what really happens in the film. Nobody knew except Samira Seraya, the actress of Yasmin. She knew exactly what she did and what she didn't do. And the investigator, we gave him a list of what was found in the scene. And we just put them in a room, and we put the camera there, and we put the recording equipment there, and we just closed the doors and left the room and left them there for 3 or 4 hours. And this all happened in one take. The entire investigation, it was all one take. We hardly touched it. I mean, I hardly gave them I gave them the instructions before, but we hardly touched it. And it was all, I mean, we sat in the other room and we were choking.
It looks like it was really hard on Samira.
Yeah, it was. It was hard, and a part of this way of working, this method of improvisation, Samira knew she was playing a role, but it was also playing a role with her own words and who she is. So casting was actually a very important part of this film. And
she's incredible. Was it mentioned that she won an award for this?
Samira Seraya won the Best Actress Award for this film in the Jerusalem Film Festival.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. So much of the film takes place on her face.
Yeah, on her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though it's verbal, it's.
Yeah, and as for the taxi driver, it's a true story. It's a scene that happened to me in real life many years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I took a taxi. I called a taxi. And I had this driver. He came with his taxi. And I sat in the back seat. And he asked me, have you ever heard Bialik in Arabic? And I said, no. And he just pressed play in the YouTube. He had this this player. And the entire taxi was filled with this song. He actually translated Bialik and other Hebrew poets to Arabic, and it's his wife singing it. And I just couldn't leave the taxi. I just couldn't get out. When we arrived, I just stayed and listened to the whole song, and then I took his phone number, and told him, I'm going to call you one day, and you're going to be in my movie.
Wow.
So, and 7 or 8 years later, I really called this guy and I said, do you remember me? You once drove me and this and that. And I said, okay, I want you to come over and do the exactly same scene with Dodi now, with the actress.
I could ask you a million more questions, but I want to open it up. I'm sure that there's a million more. Anyone?
Carol?
Oh.
There was a very big difference between the text in the poetry and the text that you say, but really different, Why is that?
The translation, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you mean the Hebrew and the English? Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, actually, it's because we didn't want to translate it like the same words. We wanted this to keep the meaning. Wanted to keep the meaning and to keep and in the second poem where it was in Hebrew it was mabat and bat, and in English it was water and daughter. And it was very important. Efrat is a poet, and it was very important to her to keep the meaning, and not necessarily the same exact words. We were thinking that in Israel, I know it's a bit problematic for people who speak both English and Hebrew, but we wanted people who don't speak Hebrew to get the real meaning of the poem.
I didn't like the translation, but my question is different. I'm a criminal lawyer. I don't practice anymore. And the whole film I'm thinking, idiot, don't say a thing. They always tell you, it's better to tell the truth. Come on, you'll tell us what you did. And she knew the law. So I thought there was a tension between how the investigator was acting, her knowing the law, and being recorded, at least in this country, it would have been thrown out. Anything she said without a lawyer would just be thrown out. But I guess this was a fiction film, so were you worried about that?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a police officer or an investigator. I know this guy is, and Samira knows the law, but we just actually, I don't know if it was made. I don't know the way it works. I mean, inside these investigations, but the guy is a real investigator, and he just did his job. I mean, I don't know about Samira. Samira actually did know the law, but when you're in such a situation where you're under so much pressure, and she just had a very traumatic experience, and she's in this place, and her family doesn't know anything about her being a lesbian, or about being not at work. At that time, she was under a great pressure, and for me, I didn't think it was not realistic. I mean,
Hold on. We're going to take questions with a microphone. So we have somebody with a hand up here.
Hi, I enjoyed the movie very much. I wanted to say that. I thought it was excellent, brilliant.
Thank you.
My question is about the two main actresses. Are they professional actresses? How did you find them?
They're both professionals. I know Samira for a long time ago. Actually, well, Dodina is one of the most prestigious actresses in Israel. And Samira Saraya, she didn't study acting, but she is a professional now. And I know her for a long time. She used to drag. She was a drag king in all kinds of the community, the queer community performances. And a few years before I made this film, someone I work with in the film industry asked me if I knew, for another film, for another TV series, she was looking for a non-actor Arab woman who was really charismatic, and I said, "Oh, you must call Samira Saraya," and that casting person, she called Samira, and Samira, that's how Samira's career started. She was in a TV series called 30 Shekels Per Hour. I don't know if you know it. It's Yossi Madmoni's and David Ofek's series. And she became a very busy actress since then, and she also plays in theater and also in other TV series, and she played in Shira Geffen's Boreg. I don't know if you saw it, another Israeli film. And when I called her and asked her to do this film with us, she was like, "Of course." And actually with Dodina it was the same. Actually, we had this idea and we were both very enthusiastic about it, Efrat and myself, and I called Dodina on Saturday morning, and I said, Jenny, I have a role for you, will you do it? And she said, of course I will, and she just came over the same day, and we talked about it, and and they gave more than their 100%. They were so involved, and it was, again, all improvised, so I'm really grateful for what they did and what they gave us.
Hi, thank you so much. I have so many questions, but I'm going to just try to keep it to like one. First of all, just thank you so much for making this film, because there's just so few films out there that have such like real, honest, intimate stories about women's lives. You know, poets, artists, also like minority. But I guess just one question is like about the investigator, because you said that it's a real investigator, and he basically ended up kind of proving the point of like biased investigations and kind of like cornering, you know, people who might not have done something wrong. So did he like have any, you know, problems with this when it came out? Like, is he mad? Is he?
I don't think, first of all, like I said, he didn't know what was true. He just knew, I mean, we gave each one of them different instructions. His instruction was, you have to get a confession out of her no matter what. And her instruction was, you're not guilty. And you're a lesbian, and you don't want anyone to know about it. And they were inside this room, and this is what happened. And I don't think, well, I spoke to him about it, about the general thing. I mean, about making someone admit something he didn't do, making people, because he's a real investigator, he probably knows what it's like. And he said it doesn't happen. He said no, we never just, you know, blame someone for something they didn't do, but, you know, I don't know, that's what he said. And my brother is also a lawyer, and he said this is a very, very important issue right now in Israel and in the whole world, like in the world of law and politics and stuff. And so I know it's very. For me, it's something that happens a lot. For me, I'm sure it happens a lot, and yeah.
What kind of reactions do you get when this gets screened in Israel about this particular issue? Do people come and...
People usually empathize with Yasmin. Usually, I mean, 99.9% of the viewers want to kill this investigator and just, you know, and want to punch him in the face. Yeah.
We have time for one last question here.
Hey, thank you so much. It was breathtaking. And I do applaud you on the way you handled the investigative situation. Because in reality, when people are pressured, nobody really knows what they're going to do. You're in a situation and you might feel something one way, and all of it, suddenly it's like, did it really happen that way? Or maybe not. Or maybe if I say this or that. And that's exactly how I feel about that. And I do believe that people are pressured to that point. And that's why we have false testimonies. So thank you for providing that for me, because it works so stunningly in the film.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Liron. I want to say that, first of all, this is a great example to Hollywood, who spends hundreds of millions of dollars, and who knows how long it takes them to make a movie. All you need, and they don't have an inkling of the tension that you created here. So all you need is 3 days, it turns out, and didn't ask you about the budget. We could talk about that later. But a wonderful job and an impactful film. Thank you so much. Thank you all.